Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with the Customer at Harris and Bruno. Today, I have one of our amazing printers with us, Chris Burnley from Corefact. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing wonderful. We got a little bit of drizzly weather outside, and I got a hot cup of coffee here, so I'm doing pretty good. And I have to ask, since this is Coffee with the Customer, what kind of coffee are we drinking today, and what are we drinking it out of?
I'm drinking out of this big mug that says "I love my dog," and this is not coffee. This is a matcha green tea. I actually gave up coffee 5 years ago, so I'm now a tea drinker.
I love it. Matcha is one of my favorites, right behind jasmine.
All right.
Great tea. And what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Shih Tzu, and he's 11 years old and starting to slow down, but we love him dearly. His name's Templeton.
Fantastic. Templeton. I love it. Very cool.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know you, can you tell us a bit about who you are, what you do at Corefact, and how you got into the print industry?
Sure. So my name's Chris Burnley, CEO of Corefact. We're coming up on our next year will be our 20th anniversary with Corefact. And, it was not, Corefact was never intended to be a printing company. We started our life as a software company, pretty much selling analytics and basically digital software to facilitate marketing. And we ended up having a situation where our customers were doing a lot of print, direct mail, and we were outsourcing that. And we ended up acquiring a print company that we were outsourcing to. And then over the last, 18 years or so, we've been growing in the print business. And now we have a couple of different brands, including companies like Stationery HQ, which does a bunch of wholesale stationery for the wedding and design industry. We have Frecklebox, which is a children's book coloring book company. We have our PSP business, which is our print service provider business. And then Corefact, which our primary business is primarily focused on the real estate industry, helping real estate agents market their listings and their brand to help grow their listings. And that's sort of what we do in a nutshell. It also probably helps to say that we're bi-coastal, so we have a facility in Northern California, and we have a facility in Louisville, Kentucky as well. So we spanned the entire United States.
That's amazing, like that evolution from not being involved in print whatsoever to what you have today. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about like what you guys specialize in. Who are those primary customers? I know you kind of just talked a little bit about some of the different industries and things that you do, but like who are those primaries? What do you guys specialize in?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the Corefact business itself,
Sure.
which focuses on the real estate industry. So our average customer is a real estate agent or a brokerage, and oftentimes, they're out there hustling, looking to grow their business, get their next listing. As you know, the real estate market is very cyclical. So in order to keep a steady flow of business, it's increasingly important to get your marketing out there so that when a seller is thinking about selling their home, they come to you. And ultimately, we put together both print and digital solutions to do that. So it's not enough to just print something and send it out. You have to kind of connect the dots, bring it full circle back into a dashboard and allow, the customers to take action, do things like follow up and effectively close that sales cycle. It's a difficult job for many of our customers, and we're just trying to make it easier, giving them high quality content, high quality print, and then effective tools on the back end to help manage all that. And then we do the same thing for brokerages at a much larger scale, where we can manage brokerages with tens of thousands of agents to an office with I think our lowest product is what we call teams, which is for real estate teams that are 10 or fewer. So we have different products basically segmented on our customers' needs.
Okay. And now you said something really interesting here. You said it's not just about sending out that piece of print, but it's about following up. with what's been sent out and closing that cycle. Can you speak a little more about that?
Yeah. So, the traditional challenge in any sales industry is typically that you don't usually close the deal on the first touch, right? So people need to be led through a journey where they can understand your brand, where they can understand your value. And then when the customer or potential prospect raises their hand, then what we try to do is capture that information. So you have intelligence of who's responding, let's say to a mailer in this case, since we're talking about print. Um, and then be able to provide, say, a follow-up tool. In a case, we might do what's called a 3D pop-up card, which could be an invitation to a meeting, could have embellishments, sort of like the gold and the foil and stuff like you guys do. And essentially, we're trying to elevate the conversation as we go. Generally, in our industry, the commissions are relatively high. So the value of a prospect greatly increases as they sort of move up that ladder, and you don't want to lose them. So ultimately, and the challenge, for many of our customers, which are often sole proprietors, is that they have so many things going on in their business and they need tools to kind of automate that and make it easier. And ultimately, that's what we strive to do. They can get in, they can get out, get what they needed done, where we can do some of the things automatically for them, and then really focus their time on working with the clients, understanding their needs, and getting that business. And ultimately, in the case of real estate, it's really a service related business. So, their reputation is everything, and having sort of that quality component to everything they do is really critical for people to build trust and effectively get to that point where they award, our clients with their business. And that's the ultimate goal. And if that works, they're happy. If it doesn't work, then we figure out why it doesn't and change the content, change the iterations, things like that, and help them get to the point where they're generating a positive ROI from all their marketing spend.
That's really awesome. And revamping kind of those campaigns to make them more effective. What are some of the top performers that you see out there? How do you create something that is going to have that high return rate or that high engagement?
Yeah, so ultimately it boils down to, the thing about marketing, it's often not about you. It's about your customer. And that's where you start. So you have to give them something of value. And let's say in the case of a postcard, which is the simplest form of direct mail that we do a lot of it. It's often using analytics and other types of technology that we infuse through variable data printing into those postcards to drive that response. So one example might be a market update card that basically shows what's sold in the neighborhood, plus a QR code that links to a home estimate page. So they can get an estimate of what their home's worth, see what is recently sold around their home, possibly see what homes are actively for sale in their neighborhood, scan that through, get to that application, and then have a button that allows them to, request a professional competitive market analysis from the agent, contact them, and so on. So it's all about trying to give them something of value and then closing the loop. Give them another reason to pull that conversation forward. And that's where it's different from just print, because you have to build all those applications, the analytics, the components that essentially control that journey. And I think that's a big differentiator for us versus our competition, is that we not only do we build the technology, but we spend a significant amount of time talking to our customers, understanding their business, understanding what their customers are thinking, and then distilling that into content that really makes a difference. And then, of course, we track all this. So we look at, in the case of direct mail, what things are getting the responses, what are being scanned, what cards are the most popular, which ones are generating the best leads. And then we try to iterate on those and just make them slightly better. So effectively, it's a massive A/B testing process across, thousands and thousands of customers, millions of postcards a month. So that's kind of how it works. And ultimately, it's been effective. We're currently in a somewhat of a downturn in the real estate market. We have effectively a million fewer listings per year. That will correct over time. You know, being in the business 20 years and, my family's been in real estate for most of my life. So I've seen this cycle. It's, every 7 to 10 years we do this and we come out the other side and get better. And often for our customers, the really interesting thing is this is, one of those periods of time where it kind of thins the herd. And so you have those competitors out there that are not putting in the work, not really, achieving the goals for their customers. And often those people drop out. And what it does is it allows those that stay in the game, those that are marketing, those that are effective, to again, gain market share. We're at sort of one of those inflection points now. It'll probably be another year, maybe two, before it recovers to a sort of a normal market, but it will. And then it'll be fun again for those that are remaining.
You got the ebbs and flows here, and we got a little more time, it sounds like. Awesome. Well, okay, so I mean, it sounds like you guys have this just amazing like grasp on how all this works, and you've seen so much change. So with that change, what trends are you noticing in the printing world, and how has your business evolved over the past few years to accommodate these trends and changes?
Yeah, so there's sort of the macroeconomic trends that I think are impacting all printers. We don't really call ourselves a printing company, even though we do a lot of print. The macro trends are, often the fact that our supply chain has been costlier. We've seen a lot of inflation over the years, labor costs increase, even things like benefits, going up 15-20% year over year. And so a lot of that has put the onus, on the management team to really focus on automation. So an example being last year, we bought a robot that essentially delivers paper from one side of the factory to the other. And it cut down 65 trips that, say, a press operator was taking to bindery a day. And the robot will work 24/7. And those are little things. And then down to print automation, where we've been investing a lot of our engineering time into fully automating the process. So you can see everywhere the jobs are on the floor, they automatically show up on the press. There's almost no pre-press involved ever. And I think you're going to see more and more trends around that. And then the other component is that while we've seen a lot of this disruptive inflation things on the business side, our customers are also feeling that. And so trying to design products that are going to work for their budgets, finding ways for them to, get the same kind of benefits, but maybe even at a different iteration or, and so on. And then what we've also seen, and I think this applies a lot to what you guys have been doing, is we're seeing a push. So the middle is kind of coming out, and what you're seeing is there are a lot of customers that want sort of a lower end product, and then our higher end customers want a luxury product. So in our case, we have a foil and varnish machine for our luxury side of the business. Particularly on real estate, we're seeing a switch to that, where customers are willing to pay a premium for a higher quality product. It's definitely impactful. I think not only when the customer sees it, but when their prospect sees it, it gets them to look to take more action. And then with with technology like that, the real critical piece is that you're adding steps effectively to the workflow, right? So if you say you're doing foil and varnish, well, that adds another step, sometimes two, to your workflow. So it's really about determining how you're going to automate that, because if you have to split out files to for the foil and for the varnish and so on, you want that all to be automatic. If that falls on a person, it makes that product very difficult to make a profit on. And so ultimately, those are the types of things to do, where we have an e-commerce platform that we built, and building in those types of capabilities to our e-commerce platform, so we can do, say, digital, variable data printing on foil at scale. And that's an evolving process. But I'd say also, the customers are always looking for bargains, and the competitive landscape is increasing, where you'll see, because the technology has allowed, smaller players to compete in the marketplace. You have to be fairly competitive. And the best way to do that is to differentiate, the product base. And some cases, if you're a slightly larger company like we are, we can do the capital investments to have that differentiation, whereas some of our smaller customers can't, or they have to outsource. And when you're outsourcing, oftentimes, there's that challenge of time, right? The
Mm.
Amazons of the world have taught our customers that if you order it today, it comes tomorrow. And if you're using an outsourced partner, oftentimes that's difficult to do or to maintain the quality that the customer expects. And so, it just keeps you on your toes. I think that's the ultimate thing. I've learned in business doing this for many years is that you can't rest on your laurels. You have to constantly innovate. You have to constantly look at what the customer needs, how the market is changing, and then adapt to, that marketplace and provide products that actually they want and value. And if they want them, they'll buy them. So, it's pretty simple actually, but much harder to pull off.
I absolutely love that. You can't rest on your laurels and you have to constantly innovate. That is such a great statement right there. It reminds me of this this book called Who Moved My Cheese? Have you read that before? Yeah,
Yes.
I love that so much. That's great. And this actually brings me to my next question, which is perfect. So how do those customer demands influence the types of services that you guys offer? And then what do they value most when it comes to those printed products? You touched a little bit on the luxury products that are becoming in demand, but what are you seeing there?
Sure. They're sort of table stakes are high quality and high speed. These days, I believe, customers really do not have patience to wait. So if you're sending a job out to offset, they're not going to wait a week to get their product back. They want it tomorrow. In some cases, they want it today. So like for some of our products, if you order by noon, they ship today. And it's that kind of speed, I think, is the most critical part. I think they want a high quality product at a reasonable price. I don't say a low price because you have to choose, right? You can be fast, you can be high quality, or you can be low price. You can't be all three. And ultimately, they get to choose that. So I'd say that's one of the biggest differences and changes that in terms of the customer need. And then I think really because technology changes so quickly, even AI and things like this, the expectations for what products can deliver and how much work is involved in generating something for them is influencing buying decisions. So if I have to go online and spend 20 minutes to generate a product to get out, they just won't do it. They want to be in and out in under 5 minutes, under 3 minutes. They want the products to do most of the work for them. And I don't even talk much about the print because the expectation is the print is perfect, right? If you're not printing perfectly, if you're sending out garbage, then you're not even in the game. I know there are companies that do that, some of the low price leaders in the space, but honestly, they eventually get one shot at the customer. They buy a bunch of ads, they get a customer, and then that was the last time they ever got the customer. So ultimately, you know, you can get a job right 99% of the time, but if the 1% you get it wrong, that's what they remember. And it's a
Absolutely. I
hard,
mean,
hard
why are you going
part.
to go back to something that didn't work, right? Or that wasn't a good quality?
Yeah. So I think, a lot of time is actually spent on those workflows, the QA, and really your team. It's the team that makes it all possible. So educating your team so they understand the needs of the customer, they understand the process, they know what's going on. They're not just a cog on the wheel. They are deciders that are going to make that journey for the customer through. And ultimately, as you try to add automation, what you're trying to actually do is elevate your team, right? You're trying to take away those repetitive tasks that they're often doing, which have less value, and elevating the value that your team brings so that they can focus on the things that are really important. It's not about getting rid of labor, but rather how do we scale without adding a ton of labor? And ultimately, the better your team is, the more capability you have there, because otherwise it's all top down where you have to just figure everything out for them. And it's much better to have a team that's very agile that can make the decisions themselves and can grow on their own, and then tell you about how they did it. That's awesome. Um,
I
Trying
love
to think
that.
of any other, the other topic is really just keeping your head down and understanding what's going on in the various industries, and then working with your product team to figure out what to do. In some cases, the customer thinks they want something and they'll tell you, oh yeah, I want X, Y, or Z, but they don't actually buy it. And so you have to almost test these products to see if there really truly is marketability. And I think that's where you think about the innovation just on the products themselves, but it's also the innovation is often just understanding the true needs of the customer and figuring out before they know where the market's going so you can help them navigate what's coming ahead. And, you make mistakes. We do a lot. We bet on certain products that don't work, but ultimately that's part of the game. And you effectively need to reduce the amount of mistakes and go with the winners. And usually you find out pretty quickly if you're selling to thousands of customers, they tell you pretty quickly what they want and what they don't want. And oftentimes innovation isn't radical. It's evolutionary. So you make subtle changes to what you're doing and just make them a little bit better. And over time, they become something brand new, but it didn't happen overnight. It may be months, years, even decades.
And that's really awesome what you're saying there about how it doesn't happen overnight. It evolves, it changes. Now, I'm assuming that this is something that you've taken and you're continuously looking ahead. You're not just, as you were saying, sitting on your laurels. You're always looking for, all right, what's changing, what's coming next, and how are we going to keep up with that? So how do you see challenges for printers today? Like what challenges are they experiencing and how are you guys personally addressing them so that you can keep staying competitive in this market?
Yeah, I think, the what I've noticed over the last 2 decades that I've been in the printing industry is that oftentimes printers sort of follow what's hit for the day, right? So, it might have been, XYZ thing, right? And everybody goes out and buys this machine and that. And honestly, I don't think that's as important as it is. If we build it, the customers will come. And that's not necessarily true. I think ultimately, if you have a good customer base, look at what they're actually doing. Look at the subtle things that you could change around that to make it better. Look for adjacent markets, adjacent products, and go there. The idea of chasing the shiny penny doesn't always work, and effectively it does a couple of things. It often divides your team's focus so that now you're working on 5 things, and we suffer from this too. But if you're working on 5 things, you're not really working on anything. And it also, it is complicated for your customers to understand if you do things radically differently than before. So I think ultimately you got to go with the journey. You can grow and add new businesses, but oftentimes you'll need a team that's fully dedicated to that because it's not just about the products. There's the customer service, there's the supply chain differences, there's workflow differences, technology differences. And putting all that stuff together because it sounds cool to go after something new will often disrupt your organization and potentially impact the things that were really successful for you in the beginning. And that's the risk, which is it seems better on the other side, but it's not. So instead, just take a look at your books, see what's really working. If nothing's working, then hey, go for it. But if you got some things that are working, double down on that and see how you can grow market share, particularly on the higher profit margin products. If you can increase market share, even a small amount, oftentimes you can produce the capital your business needs to invest in those other areas. If you're assuming you're using inside capital, inside funds, but I do think, it boils down to having that capital, having the team, and then having the focus and willing to let it ride. You're not going to change something overnight. It may take years. So just ride that wave and have, 3 to 5 year plan for doing it.
That's awesome. And it sounds like it's one of those things where it's, I mean, like you were saying, don't chase what's new, what's hip, what's trendy. Chase what you know and make it good, make it well. And if that's not working, maybe it's time to revamp and find something new.
Yeah, you think about it, right now everything's trending on AI, right? And the idea is that AI is a disruptor, and it is. But being first to market is not necessarily an advantage because the market may not be ready for something radically new. It's usually not always the first adopter that wins. So you can learn from your competitors' mistakes. You can learn from the successes of folks that are doing it well. And then when you come to market, you effectively eliminated all that turn, that market research, the trial, the error, and you come with something strong. And like I said, even on most of these disruptive technologies, they don't happen overnight. They usually take years. And so you don't have to be the first. You can sit back and watch, and then come in when it's appropriate. Come in when the technology is actually to the point where it's easier to integrate. If you're at the beginning of something, integration is going to require a massive amount of resources to do that. Whereas when you have a slightly mature market, then you can bring those technologies and things in, integrate them with a lot of success on the initial try. And you're not basically writing a new market where your customers are trying to understand what you're even doing. Now, some people say just go radical and, find a disruptor, and there are winners that way. But I think it depends on whether you want to be a business that's built like that, or you want to have a business where you can run it for generations and effectively grow in a sort of methodical way.
I love that. And I always think back to when like new technologies coming out when you're talking about this integration, right? Like think about like when we were all first getting like Bluetooth on our phones and cars didn't have it yet. It wasn't a thing. And so you had to buy the right adapter for the car, and sometimes you have to buy the right adapter for the Bluetooth. And at the end of the day, it's like you're spending all this money and does it even work well? And it does it even like function like you want it to? And then now we look to today, and pretty much every car and phone is just, you can walk up to any of them and they all work together because it's had that time to like mature and actually work properly. And now it's like proven out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So, all right, last question for you. Looking ahead, where do you see the print industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are some of the exciting things to keep an eye on? I know you said don't chase the penny, but just in your humble opinion there.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at sort of print itself, I think ultimately, and it's already begun, where a couple of things. Number one is that there is a massive undertaking to get automation. And when you think about automation, first level automation, which there is a lot of technology and capability today from the large press vendors, like HPs and so on. They have all that technology built in. And now I think customers are really starting to harness that. But ultimately, what's been missing is everything after that. The bindery all the way through, even if you have an e-commerce, all the way to customer returns for customer support, as an example, right? You should have an end-to-end automation or as much as possible in your business. And I think that trend is happening. I think businesses are paying a lot of attention to it. And I think there's a lot of innovation going on there. So I think we're going to see more and more of that mature over the coming years. Who's going to win in that space? I don't know. But ultimately, I think that's going to be one. The next thing is what I'll say is disruptive technology on the print side. There's clearly a move towards inkjet. And I think what you're seeing is the long run, so it used to be, the offset, you'd say, okay, if I'm doing 10,000 of these, it makes sense to run that offset now digital. I think that's going away. I think now you're at 100,000 and on the digital side. And I think with some of the technology that's really cool out there, even like the Lambda and so on, you're seeing a situation where ultimately, everything can be variable, no matter the size, and cost competitive. And I think when you start to look at the labor component, you really start to question whether or not that the traditional print market is going to continue that way. And I think we have a long way to go before that truly flips, because there's still going to be the statement printers and stuff like
Mhm.
that, but that where they would have these massively long runs. But I think anything in between is moving towards that direction. And then I think also on the bindery side, I believe we're going to see more and more automation machines that are actually able to communicate better, whether that's, something like a JDF type workflow or something new, who knows. But what we want to have happen, I believe, is, that you have some sort of definition of what the end product is. And as that definition, that those components work their way through the process, more and more of those things are automatically configured, done, even if there are humans that are picking things up and moving them, which are difficult for robots to do at the time. And ultimately, what that will boil down to is more efficiency, higher quality, because it's usually the human interactions, the variations that create the challenges. If all we had to do was print, one sheet of paper, we always cut to the same size, there'd be very few problems. The thing is, customers expect more and more options, and those options, create these permutations where you might have A times B times C times D. Now all of a sudden you have 100,000 different product possibilities. And that's very hard for humans, I think, to consume. But as we automate the process, ultimately a machine can do that very easily. And I think that's where the human machine coexistence works out really well. And I do see that's the big evolution. We're doing a ton of it. I'm originally a software engineer, still software engineering, and I'm writing a lot of automation software myself internally to control some of these things in our business. Because what we want to do is we don't want to take the decisions out of the human's hands, but we want to effectively make those decisions easier. And in many cases, we already know what the outcome should be. So there's no point in having to decide that along the way. Just put that information through. And I think those are the biggest changes. And then the other thing I would say in the industry is that there's massive consolidation. And, a lot of this originally was, I think, driven by cheap capital. And we'll see whether that continues. If money's cheap, then there are always going to be those that are out there that effectively just want to buy, customer chains and production capabilities. It's a lot easier than building it. And if that continues, then we're going to see more and more consolidation. And then what will happen is you'll end up with these very big players. And then ultimately, I think there will be small upstarts that will come in and try to disrupt them, sort of the Clayton Christensen disruption model. But, ultimately,
Mhm.
it's just a cycle that repeats. But right now, I do see a lot of consolidation, and oftentimes another disruptive component to that is if you're a company that's buying up, a bunch of different companies, you may not want all of it, and so they'll shed customers, and that creates opportunities for new entrants to pick up those customers that were effectively abandoned by the consolidator. And we're seeing a lot of that. The other big change is the complexity of products. We do a ton of perfect bound books, and in perfect bound books, it sounds simple, but they're highly complex. The whole process, and including whether you're doing variable data covers with foil and you're binding those, you're doing case binding. There are complexity of products in the market is driving the prices down. So there's that idea of more and more automation to make those complex products simpler. I think those are some of the disruptions that we're seeing. You know, and I probably should mention, the labor disruption itself, because the cost of labor is going so high. I think companies are looking at different ways to manage. And while outsourcing is not always the best scenario, sometimes it is, especially when you have those complexity issues, where you can have a vendor out there, partner, that does something really well that's complex, better than you'll ever be able to do it, or without a massive investment of time and money. And we'll see that. And that's where you see some of these glue products that effectively make it really easy to move work from one place to the other. And if that continues, that will impact a lot of printers, because your sales become less dependent on the quality of your sales team and of the partners that you have. And you have less autonomy, but ultimately if you're a good partner, you have a constant supply of work. So we'll see. I see that changing very rapidly, and I've seen it go backwards too, where customers that outsourced everything, it gets to a certain scale, and then they bring it back in house to improve margin. But it is a disruptive force, and it causes churn in the market.
I mean,
So
it
hopefully that
certainly
answers your
sounds like it.
question,
No, very, very much
at least
so.
from my
And
perspective.
going back to that first part of that question, the biggest thing I heard there was efficiency, quality driven by automation, taking away those smaller tasks that can be done by automation so that you can focus on the more important things.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really simple stuff. Like I'll give an example of your new coder that does the foil. I think one of
Mm,
the challenges in that marketplace, particularly on uncoated, is how do you foil and varnish an uncoated sheet?
mm,
And if you're doing it traditionally, that means you're probably running it through multiple processes. You're running it through some kind of coating. You're then running it through your foil machine, and so on. And you guys kind of integrated. I think more and more of those types of things are coming from different vendors that essentially take out those steps, but they also make it so that those types of processes are more predictable, where you have a lot less waste. You have confidence then in selling products at a different price point than you normally would, and that gives you a competitive edge. That's true across the board. As the automation gets better with the sort of the manufacturers, I think we're going to see disruption on that competitive edge, right? Because if I can sell something for a different price than you can, or I can produce it faster, more accurately, um, that gives me a leg up.
So absolutely, Chris, this has been absolutely amazing. I mean, my mug's empty, my mind's full here. I love this. Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
All right. So long. Until next time.
Till next time.